Well, Chief, I'd like to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. From time to time, I like to come before council and address the various issues that the police department has been involved in. The mayor, you alluded to a couple, the mental illness initiative with the mental health court, the homeless initiative, I think now approaching a year and a half, 2 year involvement, and then the gang initiative that I will speak to some specificity this evening. As you all know, in the last several years, communities outside the metro area have been challenged with gang activity. And I'll give you just kind of a snapshot of what that looks like for us. In 2015 so far, we've had 58 violent Part 1 offenses. Of those, 28 or 48% are gang related. If we look over 10 years and we do some extrapolations, it'll put us somewhere between 3 or 4 in terms of amount of violent crime in 10 years. So it's not astronomical, but it is significant. The response by the police department has included several components. One is, some time ago, we created a gang unit as a part of special investigations. We also increased the education and presentations that we've done around the community. For about 15 years, we've done presentations at the school. But in the last 2 to 3 years, we've expanded those to various community groups and churches. Since 2013, I think we've done almost 50 presentations with somewhere around 6,000 being touched during those presentations regarding information involving gangs. We've also collaborated with the District Attorney's Office to create the Troup County Counter-Gang Coordinating Committee, and the chair of that committee, who is an assistant district attorney, Ray Mayer, is here, and I'll ask him to share some brief comments with you. We've also augmented patrol with special details, focusing solely on gang-related activity. And to give you an example, since the 1st of May, that initiative has resulted in 103 arrests, 4 gang charges, and 8 firearms that were recovered during those efforts. Understanding that gangs are a symptom of other variables that the police really have little control over, we've created about a year ago a community outreach unit and also a community outreach advisory committee made up of community members. This initiative helps us address those variables that create an environment for gang membership and seek to address community awareness and, more importantly, action. And we have several members of that community outreach initiative that are here that would also share some information with you. So what I'd like to do is just ask Assistant District Attorney Ray Mayer to come up and share with you our collaboration with Ray, with the District Attorney's Office and other law enforcement bodies around the West Georgia area.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. And I'm Ray Mayer. I'm with the DA's office. I've been with the Coweta Circuit since 1999. Spent most of those years in Coweta. I was here for a year about 10 years ago. So now I've been back since 2013, and I appreciate the opportunity to spend a few moments talk about gangs from our standpoint, which is the DA's office. And let me start off saying we do have a serious gang problem here in Troup County, and it's mostly LaGrange. I don't want to make that sound unusual because we have seen a remarkable increase in gangs across the nation, the Southeast being one of the 2 largest areas that's growing. The gangs are spreading from Y'all have heard about the Crips and the Bloods in Los Angeles, the Gangster Disciples in Chicago. Well, they've spread across the country, gone to the major metropolitan areas. Atlanta is just covered up in gangs. And then they have spread to where pretty much any city the size of LaGrange or larger has a gang problem. And it takes time to identify it as a gang problem, and once it is, then how to deal with it. Unfortunately, it puts us a little bit behind the power curve. Well, what happened was that I had just been back here for maybe a month when Chief Dekmar came to the district attorney, and I happened to be there, and this was in the wake of 13 gang-related shootings in LaGrange alone in 2013. This was in August. Ended up we had over 30 in 2013. But when it got to that number, Chief Dekmar said they needed to become a priority. Well, they had already become a priority with him. He had a gang investigator, Investigator Ray Ham, who's third from the left in the back there, as a gang investigator. And Investigator Ham is just an extraordinary individual. Has done incredible things thus far. So I was tagged to help under the dubious distinction that in 2008 I tried to get something started in Noonan and Coweta and failed because they did not want to recognize a gang problem there. They have only after we did it have come out and acknowledged it and formed a unit such as ours. Ours is called the Troup County Counter-Gang Coordinating Committee. And it's comprised not only of LaGrange, although most of the gangs are here, West Point, which has a gang problem, Hogansville has a small gang problem, the county, because of course most of the gangsters end up in the jail, and we have expanded it, and the DA's office of course, and we've expanded it now to include probation, very active in it, juvenile court and others. And we've had success. And when I say we, it's most of the LaGrange police. We have been recognized by the Georgia Gang Investigators Association, which has over 700 members, been awarded by them. Ray Ham and I spoke at the summer conference of the GGIA back in 2013. And then we spoke with the Georgia Narcotics Officers Association, both about how to get started with a gang unit because we were in the process of getting started ourselves. We have since not only built ours, but we've gotten one started in Coweta, we've gotten one started in Carroll. We've worked with Chatham County, Muskogee County, Henry, Spalding counties, and others trying to get going. It's amazing that towns like Columbus don't have a gang task force because they have an incredible number of gangsters now. Savannah as well. But they're behind the power curve. We are not. I have passed around to y'all the statistics and the records that I keep, and just so you know, just hearing me talk, you know, we have had or have 123 gang cases. This is all since September of 2013. And these are our numbers, not LaGrange Police. These always lag behind the police department. There's been a lot of gang activity recently, and those arrests, those investigations are not included on this. But we in the DA's office have closed 57 cases, which means we have convicted gangsters in 57 gang cases. We have 31 on the docket right now, and we know of 35 coming our way. These are the cases, the number of gangsters. The numbers don't correlate very well because a lot of our gangsters are repeat customers. So some of them will have multiple cases by the time we do get them locked up. We have been hitting hard the Bloods, which is a dominant gang here in LaGrange, and we're in the process of the Gangster Disciples. Those are our two major gangs. And they have been very, very violent lately. A lot of shootings, and we're working hard. We're working hard to find out who did it and take them down. We estimate that as many as we have taken off the streets, there are well over 100 more in the city of LaGrange operating today. What they do, they sell drugs primarily. That's where they get their money. Some of the gang sets rob people, burglaries, and they war with each other. And right now they're warring within and involving a lot of shootings. And of course, all the shootings are not tidy. Gangsters, and you see from gangster shows on TV, that's what they do, drive-by shootings. The murder, I believe they shot 20 or more times and hit the guy once. Well, the other 19 bullets were spraying around in a crowded neighborhood, and that's the way they do it. So they are definitely pose a serious risk to innocents because they will not settle their differences where innocents are not put in danger. So Chief Deckmar saw this, took action with the resources available to him, primarily Ray Ham, got us involved, teamed me up with Ray Ham. Jeff Bendinger is here. He's a young assistant DA who's working gang cases very aggressively. And I'm just here to tell you what I think we need. First of all, we need Ray Ham full-time. He is not a full-time gang prosecutor. He does this on the side, does remarkable work, but he is pulled off on every other crime that the Special Investigation Unit is involved with. So we need an investigator so that we can have Ray Ham full-time, and I can promise you it would be a remarkable difference in the safety of our citizens with just that one move. That would be an additional investigator to free him up. The other thing we need is a gang analyst. Gang warfare is primarily intelligence, gathering the intelligence, analyzing it, and using it. But we don't do that. We gather it and we use it for the individual cases, and then we let the rest of it lie. For instance, gangsters love to talk on the phone, they love to text each other, they love to spread their communications on Facebook and other social media, which is the bread and butter of what we do. The problem is every time we do a gang case, we do a search warrant for Facebook, we'll get thousands of pages. And so Ray Ham primarily will go through all that, sort out what we need for that case, and then the rest just sits there. And the rest of it are just golden, because through that information we can figure out who the gangs are, who the gang sets are, where they are, who they are, what they're doing, and it will facilitate our prosecution of them. The ultimate goal being that if we change the chance of going to prison to become a likelihood of going to prison, maybe we'll start deterring people joining these gangs, because we know that they are recruiting in middle schools now. They're using middle schoolers to run drugs. They are recruiting them. They are building gangsters out of the young folks. And between arresting those that break the law and continued community outreach, hopefully we will deter them. Hopefully, I can't say we will end gangs, because there always are gangs, but hopefully we can keep them in check and make things a whole lot more safer for our citizens. So what I would propose and ask the council to consider are 2 slots for LaGrange Police, an investigator and an analyst. And with that modest addition, I think we can make considerable progress in the coming year or 2. That's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
I don't have questions, I have some comments. I'm concerned because I know we have gangs in LaGrange. I'm concerned because I understand also that if they are a proven gang member, that an additional time will be added to the sentence. I just didn't want us to get those things confused and get a person that's have done a crime and then tag on that he's a gang member when he's not a gang member, and we're losing time with this one than we should be devoting time on another. Just want to make sure that we got somebody that I know Raham said that is qualified with gangs. We want to make sure we're getting gang folk, because I want to get them off the street.
Sure.
But I just don't want to make sure, I want to make sure that we don't get a citizen that's not a gang member and get this extra thing tied onto them. I've had some concerns on that.
I understand what you're saying, sir. That's exactly what the Gang Act does. It's not unlawful to be in a gang. It's not unlawful to be in a gang like the Bloods. It only becomes unlawful when you commit a crime while being in the gang. And when we get that evidence, and it's primarily Facebook, cell phones, we charge them. And is it an enhancement statute that can add time or affect their parole when they're in it? If you look at those cases there, you will see that in the time we have been doing this, we have closed 57 cases, we have tried none. All those are guilty pleas. So there's no one going to prison or no one getting on probation with a gang conviction that hasn't seen the evidence we got against them and acknowledged it and pled guilty. So we don't have, it's not a question of have we bamboozled the jury to find an innocent person guilty. That hadn't happened. It isn't going to happen on my watch, I can assure you, sir.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor. Yes, and to that inquiry, Councilman Edmondson, the way these cases are handled, they're not only vetted through the gang unit, but they also have to be approved by a supervisor. Then they're reviewed by the district attorney's office. And in addition to the gang charge, there has to, before you can go forward with a gang charge, you have to have the predicate crime of whatever that crime is that shows it's in furtherance of gang activity. So we could have a gang member that is involved in a crime, but it has nothing to do with the crime, and therefore the gang statute would not be appropriate. But thank you for that concern, because when I speak to community groups, frequently they ask that. They hear something, but oftentimes when I check, they haven't quite heard all the facts. But I would certainly, one of the, you know, as a police chief here now for 20 years, one of the, I think, positives is that anytime any member of this council has a concern, they call me and I can address that concern. Either assure you because I've seen the facts, or fix it because the facts don't dictate the action that was taken. So thank you.
Chief, one follow-up to that. District Attorney Mayor said that we needed a gang analyst position, was one of the points that he made. And as I mentioned in the budget that the council reviewed today and is moving forward with, we did include 2 new gang positions. I was not aware that Investigator Ham was not a full-time gang officer. I was not aware of that. But with him and with these 2 new positions, how do you envision responding to that particular concern of having a gang analyst?
One of the positions was a gang analyst.
Oh, okay. And so you anticipate one of the new positions will be a gang analyst, add an additional gang investigator, and then also Investigator Ham will still be there. And then how internally, when you say before you bring gang charges, it's reviewed by supervisors, et cetera, I think, how will that change at all with these new additions? No. There will still be the same process, it'll still be vetted, and the charges won't actually be filed, I guess, until they make their way over to the district attorney's office.
No, we would file the charges after the arrest, but the indictment would not occur until the district attorney's office agrees.
So there's 2 vetting processes. One is internal to see, is this really a gang activity?
Actually, there's 3.
3?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's the PD, there's the DA who decides to bring gang charges, then there's the grand jury that agrees with that decision.
Right. So there's 3 steps where the evidence of gang activity, Councilman Edmondson's concern, is addressed.
Yes, sir.
Somebody addresses, is this truly a gang member, or is this someone who committed a crime kind of independently,
sure,
you know, whatever the issue is, but not necessarily an affiliation with one of the gangs that we're dealing with.
And as I started out, you know, 48% of our violent crime, you know, has morphed into gang-related crime. So it's something that we take serious. It's something that, there's a lot of community concern on. But the other part of it is, we've got to be surgical in how we use these tools, not just kind of bulldozing over folks. And I would invite any of you, if you have any concern or you're concerned about from a constituent, to please contact me. I'll be delighted to sit down with you and review the file with you.
Well, what I appreciate, Chief, in your approach is, as you and I have discussed many times, this is both about responding as a law enforcement agency to actual crime that has occurred, but it's also working on the prevention side
Right.
of trying to address some of these issues in the community that are resulting in the gang membership.
And I think at this point what I'd like to do is,
you want
a
to
good
segue.
segue. I'd ask.
Would you like to ask all of them?
Yes, I'm going to ask him
to stand.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wanda, I'm going to call on you because Wanda somehow inherited the role of secretary of our group, and so she is the one charged with keeping notes. Wanda Scarborough, if you'll please come forward. Wanda also, representing the faith community, was very active with me and the police department in developing the mental health court. She's also worked closely with us in developing the homeless initiative. With those that are involved, I see Curtis over there, community outreach, go ahead and stand up for me, please. Community outreach folks.
Curtis, Mia,
Roland. And those that have something that they'd like to share, if you go ahead and come up front and sit down up here so that when Ms. Scarborough gets through, you can go ahead and come forward. Wanda?
I would just like to say that I feel like that Chief Detmar has made an initiative to strengthen the community to fight crime, and he's invited the community leaders and the pastors to join him and hear the vision that he has for the city and to be a part of that. And I believe it's empowered the leaders to initiate projects in the community. And it's a win-win effort and a proactive approach by the LaGrange Police Department. The police department needs the churches to fully engage in these neighborhoods to reduce crime and deal with the social problems. And when Chief Detmar acknowledges the church's importance in the community and requests their partnership in solving issues, I believe that it empowers them. And it strengthens them to do greater things than they would have done if they had not been asked to serve their city. It gives us an opportunity to go into the community with confidence, knowing that we have the backing of Chief Detmar. And also, I believe that lots of times an immediate credibility is established and the community will engage a lot quicker when we have the backing of the city to do these things. I believe there's a synergy that's created when government and the church work together, and we can accomplish more together than we could accomplish just on our own. There are groups of people that are coming together during these committee meetings, and they're hearing what the other agency does, and they're hearing the needs of that agency, and they're reaching out to fill those needs, such as the ARC. There are men now going to see how they can help strengthen what Ms. Lopez does. And then also, there's been a lot of brainstorming as to what we can do, and people are beginning to implement plans off of those new ideas. I know Amia Cotton is working with the youth to stop violence, and Pastor Rowland and Dr. Tucker are moving forward on their Calumet Village project. And then we're also exploring working with Feeding the Valley to be able to go into neighborhoods and offer food as a way of building relationships and also sharing ideas on how to improve and strengthen the community. And I believe that these relationships will pave the way to change. And I just want to express my thanks to Chief Detmar and to his staff for giving us the opportunity to help him with this quest to build people and neighborhoods for a better tomorrow.
Thank you, Juan. Next.
The Off Refuge Ministry would just like to let you guys know that we are so honored to be a part of this outreach initiative, and that we are proud to be being a part of a problem solving instead of being part of the problem, and changing the image of LaGrange, Georgia. God bless you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mia Cotton with the Trick County Anchor Foundation, and we would also like to thank also the council and the city of LaGrange's Chief Dick Moore and his staff as well for helping us with the different activities that we try to put on for the youth for LaGrange. We all know it's been a numerous of gang violence, gang activity, and with us coming together to bring the police back in positive form to show, hey, it's okay, we can work together and try to stop some of the gang violence that's been going on. We just did, we partnered with David Simpson and Nate Newsom to do a unity walk a week ago this Sunday, and also Sergeant Bird been a big help as well as far as getting things out here in the community to do for the youth. We started at Chapman, going through Benji Harvey Hills. We went up Hanley to Whitesville to Hamilton to McGregor, just basically hitting all the spots where some of the violence is occurring to say, hey, no, we're here and we want to put an end to violence. Chief Deckmar and his staff has been great as far as helping the Anchor Foundation put on numerous events. We also have another event coming up on August the 15th at LaGrange College Price Theater, and we're calling it Retrospective, a Time of Healing. And going to be different speakers there as well. Our guest speaker will be Kit Cummings, who's also into talking about gang violence as well. And we just want to say thank you. It's a start to new beginnings to help as far as with gang violence. So thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. Dr. Tucker, Pastor Rowland, I hate to say this in a public setting because I know it so much work has been done since. But in my mind, the shooting that occurred in your park in the summer of 2013 is really what crystallized for me in my mind that we do have some gang-related issues in our community. I mean, kind of to District Attorney Mayer's point before, I think he said Noonan had gang activity and everyone denied it. And I think there was a tendency, even in LaGrange, for us to, if not deny it, to just ignore it. But when you have 7 people shot one night in the park, in your cross the street from your house, in your neighborhood, I think that really, in my mind, crystallized that we had an issue. What has been so exciting to me is that you and Pastor Rowland and the other neighbors in Calumet didn't let that run you off, but instead it inspired you to do even more to improve that area. So I publicly, both because of the mention of when this got started, when this was brought to our attention, I wanted to make that comment, but I particularly wanted to again publicly thank you for the work that you've been doing in your neighborhood.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank this council for all of the support that we've gotten, and you're absolutely right. I think this initiative, the outreach through the police department, and I have to mention Sergeant Bird also, has been just godsend to help us create a community where gangs, we probably have gang members there, but I think if you have a viable community where people are engaged with each other and keep the community up and not let it run down, remove areas or upgrade areas where bad things can fester, I think it helps a lot. In the coordination with the police department, the city government, everybody has really made a tremendous difference, and I really believe that will be part of the solution to making LaGrange a tremendous city. Good things will happen here, but it's going to take all of us working together to do it. And that's what's happening with the initiative that we have through this outreach work with the police department. And I want to thank Chief Deckmar and Sergeant Byrd in particular, because I work closely with him, and the other police officers that we have contact with for their help. And I really do feel that now we're starting to see a better relationship in our community with the police. And that's a big step. Now, I'm not saying that everybody they love the police, but it's not, I don't think it's an automatic negative anymore with the work that Sergeant Byrd has done and Chief Deckmar and others. So I believe that we are turning the corner. Long, long ways to go, but we're going to continue to work hard to continue to improve. And we want to thank y'all again for all of the support.
Dr. Tucker, if I can ask just you as a retired educator, worked in the school system most of your career, hear that gang members are being recruited in middle school now. As you know, as you heard, we've added a school resource officer at Dr. Newman. Obviously, Mia, through the Anchor Foundation, has been working with young people. Any suggestions that you have or Mia has of things that we can do to more effectively reach the young people? If you like to share any of that.
Well, one thing that we will try to do in our community is to give young people an alternative. I've been real pleased. Sometimes I'm in my yard a lot. Many of you know I talk to you about some other issues. But I was just pleased to see some young kids, I don't know whether they were middle school, right in that age range, would come by and would ask if I could help them get a job. Do you know where I can get a job? And I always ask, what can you do? What do you want to do? And of course the answer is anything. But kids, if we can give them an alternative, not just somewhere to play, but to try to help guide them in, toward toward having something work, something that will engage them. They must have an alternative. If I'm left to flounder, I'm going to take what's there. And gangs are right there waiting to grab them. So I think to answer you, from my perspective, is to, and it doesn't have to be anything huge. It's got to be some things that we can provide. I know in the park up there, we get kids at the basketball courts. Pastor Mike works with them often, and he's able to communicate with a lot of the young kids up there. But we just have one basketball court, and the older kids tend to push the others out, but somehow they get in. So to give an alternative to them would be helpful.
Thank you.
I want to say to Chief, I just applaud him for getting this group together because you have from each segment of our community, because we have some great kids out there. Some great kids out there. We have some bad apples that's out there that's rotten to the core. And I was telling someone not long ago, they interviewed me concerning something, I think Dr. Dowell was called me. And you can no longer do it from the church because these guys are not going to church. So you have to do it in the streets. You have to take it to the street. So anything that I can do, not as a councilman per se, but as a person, as a citizen of LaGrange, to take our streets back, let me know. Because I just know we have some great kids.
All right, thank you. Well, I got a lot of the focus, but really, you know, because I'm the chief, I get the accolades, but really it's easy for me to get the accolades when I sit on the shoulders of the folks that really do the work. I could go through and I could name each one of them some contribution they've made through our community outreach initiative. And I think we've got 40, 45, Wanda, that show up at lunch for a meeting when we have it. And they are not all of them started out as supporters. You know, the first couple of meetings, you know, there's some hard questions, and what I found is, in the case with them, as in most things, and certainly you all know in your experience, 90% of the time it's communication. Technically, historically, our officers do an excellent job, technically. Sometimes I think where we miss the opportunity is the opportunity to maybe develop the relationship that really creates the energy that is missing to, rather than just address an issue, but to resolve the issue. And so I'm very proud of the folks at the police department that have worked hand in hand with our different members of community outreach. And this council in 20 years have never turned down a request by me. I'm always careful not to request it because you always give it to me. But you've always given us what we need to do the job, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your support. Any questions?
Any questions for the chief?
No, I think we gave him that resource officer, didn't we, today?
Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, I was going to say, Chief, you know, I applaud you. Obviously, I think, as I think you know, I think we all believe that the police department does a fabulous job of enforcing the law and protecting us in the community. I applaud you specifically for this community outreach initiative that you undertook last year. And I was able to attend one of those sessions, and to a point you just made, I remember sitting there in the session before it got going and recognizing one particular gentleman in the room who in the past has been, in conversation with me, very critical of the police department. And so I really didn't know exactly what to expect when the conversation developed. But he obviously had learned to appreciate the work that y'all do and to recognize what a tough job it is to enforce the law. And I think one of the things you did of putting a lot of your members through the simulations, the shoot, don't shoot simulations, I think that was really effective at teaching people how difficult the job is. And that's an example of just opening lines of communication. Not instantly being defensive to the criticism, but instead saying, come and sit at the table and let's talk about it, and let's talk through the issues and the concerns. And I think you've done a fabulous job of that for 20 years, but particularly in this initiative. And I'm hopeful. I think Dr. Tucker and some of the others' comments will indicate that this will have fruit in the years to come as the relationship between the city and the police, the community and the police continues to improve.
Well, this frankly is a challenging time for law enforcement. We're under scrutiny that, we've not seen since the late 60s, early 70s. And oftentimes what's lost in the focus on bad outcomes are the facts. And the facts are, and their secret about law enforcement really is it's social work. About 15% of what we do results in an arrest. The other 85% is mediation, resource referrals, problem solving, or oftentimes just being an ear to listen. And I'm, again, very proud of the men and women that every day do that very difficult job, and in an instant of time has to make a decision that affects not only the lives of the people they're dealing with, but their family members. And so we take that charge seriously, and we appreciate the confidence that you have in us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief, could I ask you one question?
Sir.
I'd say, I don't know how many meetings I've been through so far, not as many as some of my colleagues here, but this is probably the most sobering council meeting I think I've attended since I've been on council. And these numbers are shocking to me, and I suppose I've been naive and realizing that there's more of a problem going on than I realized was going on. But of course you're addressing this, you have a plan, you have excellent resources, we try to give you whatever we can to help. What sort of track record do you see in other communities with this type of effort? I'm sure that one of the answers is it's going to take time to turn this thing around. And what is the solution? I mean, are you Do you sort of drive these people out of the community, or are you working on the development side? Where is the real
It's a combination. We have some individuals that are gang members that actually have approached the police department, or as a result of developing a relationship with law enforcement officers, want to get out of the gangs, and so we've worked with them in that instance. The community outreach, recognizing that, you got to get involved and have a relationship. Somebody has to have a relationship, and what I'm always telling the folks at community outreach is government is not a good parent. So we need to create in neighborhoods and communities people that these young folks can look up to, and that all they need is one person to care, because most of the kids, they don't have a sense of hope. And when all you believe is hopelessness, you have nothing to lose. And so we have to, the police department can't do it. The police department can foster it, can support it, can help point out, where our problem areas are, which we have. But then the rest of the community has to engage, and that's what we've seen. We've always had gangs, like I said in my comments. For 15 years we've been doing gang education to high schools. But the gangs generally have been local. It's only in the last 4 or 5 years that you've seen affiliations now with the national identities, such as the Bloods, the Crips, the Gangsters Disciples. And so as a result of that formal relationship, we've seen significantly more violence. So we're hearing it from the community engagement part, from the law enforcement part. We have our ear open for those that are looking for some way to get out of the gang and shift them to a resource that can help them. When you talk about track records, it's funny that the initiative that we started very quickly got statewide, if not a regional reputation, and so we were asked to share our model with others. And when you get down to it, the nuts and bolts of crime fighting are pretty much the same. You identify who it is, and once they're identified, based on their record, based on their attitude, based on their actions, the court ultimately decides if they're a good risk. They're a good risk to the community, or do they need to be warehoused so that the community is protected? What we've seen with these gang charges and the sentences that have accompanied them is, and if you look at the crime stats, you'll notice that we have high gang activity, and then our violent crimes seem to have gone down. That's when we were successful, but that left the leadership vacuum, and what you see now is some internal fighting as a result of that. So it's a very dynamic environment, and we just have to be nimble and flexible enough and have the resources to identify it and then quickly address it through the numerous resources that we have, not just at the police department, but we can engage countywide, statewide. But I'm confident.
One other aspect of it is, one of you mentioned that the funding, the money, is drug money. And I assume that it's not necessarily the person making the drug deal who's doing the violence. It could be separated, or is it often the same? Like in these charges or these cases, how many of these would also have illegal drug charges along with them?
It is not uncommon for us when we make arrests in drugs for there to be weapons associated with it. Semi-automatic weapons, rifles, that sort of thing. So in that regard, it's almost hand in glove with weapons and drugs, unfortunately.
Chief, do you have any representative from the hospital on your team, somebody that sees the end result of some of the violence, the shooting victims, their families?
We don't, but we, through Anchors, we initiated a support group. We're in the process of putting that together, Mia and her folks, which are for people that are the survivors, the family members of homicide victims. And so we're in the process of putting that together. We deal, the police have an interesting relationship because they deal intimately with the family, with the victim, and with the suspect and the suspect's family. And so we get an interesting view because of the exposure we get from.
Collateral damage, if you will. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, Pastor Edmondson,
Oh, yeah,
I
he-
can't even imagine to stand there time and time again and eulogize or prepare or deal with the families in the hour of need.
Dr. Edmondson is all too familiar with the consequences of this violence. I appreciate your interest in it. What I'll do is from time to time come back to council and update you on what we've done and how it's working, and if we need some additional resources, we'll request those too.
One last thing
Yes,
I'd like
ma'am.
to ask. I know usually when we honor our officers, everybody scatters right after the presentation, but tonight we're fortunate that quite a few of our officers stayed. If we could just have them
Sure.
introduce themselves, their length of service. Thank you so very much for all that you do every day and putting your lives on the line.
Johnny, can we start with you?
Sergeant Johnny Bird, I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator. Been here for 20 years.
Mike File, currently serve as the Patrol Commander, also been on LaGrange now for 20 years.
Mark Costiel, I'm a lieutenant within our patrol division. I've been there 18 and a half years.
Lieutenant Eric Lohr, I'm the training coordinator for the agency, and I've been here for about 19 years. Bill Armstrong, the traffic news
30 years.
Robert Kirby, I guess I'm the baby of the group. I've been for 12 years, and I supervise detectives in the criminal investigations section.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
I want to particularly recognize Sergeant Bird because he not only takes care of community outreach, he also serves as our representative for mental health court, which I think from time to time I let you know that the small seed money that you all put up with, which was not budgeted. Again, another instance where we came to you with a need and you fulfilled it. We have.
I'll give you a little bit more today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Though Tom reminded me it hasn't officially been voted on, so. But that's another initiative that impacts people without means. And, they can't get the treatment, they can't afford it. And so mental health court, the 25 folks, Johnny, I think we had identified responsible for 200 arrests, and I think we've had less than 3, though you told me the number went down just a little recently, but less than 3 arrests. I mean, so, those are things that impact and make a difference, and we appreciate that support. Also, Sergeant Bird and Captain File feed the valley. I think Captain File became aware that they were going to throw some food away, and gathered it up in his truck and went into an area and started going door to door, and as a result now he has a following in some of these neighborhoods when he shows up in his truck, and I think community outreach is going to take up in some of the faith communities, so we're leveraging that relationship also. Everyone here has contributed, and again, I've got the easiest job in the group, and I appreciate the fact that you guys support us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chief, and thank you for your report. Thank you for all those who participate in it, either through the police department or through the outreach or through the district attorney's office. We obviously have spent a lot of time tonight on this particular topic, but I think that's a testimony to just how important we feel that this issue is, and to Dr. Gore's point, it is sobering to see some of the statistics, to hear some of the stories, but it's also sobering to read the newspaper articles and to see the shootings and some of those types of things that have occurred in the community. It's something that we need to attend to, and as I've shared with the chief, I share with the council. My attitude is never to ignore an issue. I mean, you never get anywhere by ignoring something. If there is an issue, let's bring it front and center. Let's talk about it. Let's not be ashamed of it. Let's solve the problem. And I commend Chief Degmar, and I know you have a lot of help in that, but I commend you for taking the lead in trying to solve this problem in our community. I think it will make us a much better city going forward.